Any healer that you go to will fail you because ultimately you're your own healer. Any provider or practitioner that calls themselves a healer is not the path. Now, we all know the system is broken. We've all seen it. We've all experienced it. We've seen it in our families. Maybe you've experienced it yourself. Now, the system is not the only thing that is failing you. You are failing yourself because you've been outsourcing your own well-being and your healing for far too long. It's time to take your power back. Now, I'm going to tell a story of how I was able to take my power back by joining my beautiful wife, who had already broken free of the matrix, to help heal our son. This is our son, Theo George Blymiller. He was born June 24th, 2015. He was born of emergency C-section because he had stopped growing at 32 weeks. Because he was so underdeveloped, he was placed on oxygen for the first 4 months of his life. And the state of Utah put him in a program called early intervention. This is Katie, Theo's caseworker and occupational therapist. We love Katie. She worked with Theo for about 15 months. And about 15-month mark, she thought it was unethical to continue billing insurance for the early intervention because he had caught up with his cohort. About that time, we caught a video here. See if it plays. I don't know if the microphone will pick it up. But he's at my soccer game, and his mom tells him to say, "Go, Daddy." And it's clear as day, he says, "Go, Daddy." At the time, he had many other words. He said, "Mommy," "milk," "more," "ball," etc. Soon after that, Theo regressed. He stopped talking. He stopped making eye contact. He stopped responding to his name. My wife, Theo's tiger mom, understandably became very concerned. She went on social media and through hashtags created a group of moms across the country that had kids who had regressed. And they all joined together to find solutions for these incredible kids. Now, we went through a lot. When I say we, I mean her. She did a lot of work. She dove into the clinical studies with these moms. They had to learn Latin and Greek because if you didn't know, a lot of medical terminology, the etymological root is Latin and Greek. So they dove into the medical research to really understand how they could help these kids. Now, I was in denial for a long period of this time. I thought it was just a stage that he would just grow out of. When I come home from work, Angela would bombard me with these clinical studies to help me or to get me into the recovery, into the research. And it caused a lot of conflict, to be honest. I'd come home from work and I thought, you know what? I'm the father, I'm the husband. My job is to earn the money, bring home the bacon. You take care of the kids. Until one day, I came home from work. Eva, who's 2 years older than Theo, my wife said, "You need to go talk to Eva." Eva, earlier that day, she had come to Angela and said, "Mommy, why doesn't my brother love me?" And my wife says, "Of course he loves you. What do you mean?" "All my friends' little brothers, they laugh with them. They play with them. Theo doesn't laugh with me. He doesn't play with me. He doesn't love me." When my wife told me this story with the help of Eva, it broke me wide open. At the time, my wife had been bugging me to try the Dan diet, which is gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, casein-free, and I told her, "You're crazy. This is hippie logic. This would never work." But that day, after my daughter told this story, cracked me wide open, and I felt desperate to do something. So I turned to my wife and I said, okay, I'll give you 2 weeks. After that 2 weeks, I don't want to hear another word. We'll move on to something else. A week later, my wife and I are settling down into our bedroom. The kids are playing out in the front room. Eva comes running down the hallway. Says, Mommy, Daddy, did you hear that? Theo is laughing. Theo is laughing with me. He loves me. I turned to my wife sheepishly, kind of with my shoulders shrugged, a little bit of embarrassment. Like, all right, I guess we're doing this. About this time, Theo was being pushed in all different types of categories. He had occupational therapy, speech therapy, ABA therapy, any type of therapy that we could put him in, we put him in. And I thought to myself, if he's going to be tested every single day, I have to push myself. I have to challenge myself. That's when I made a goal to start reading books. I picked up the goal to read 2 books a month every month. I've done it for 6 years and I've read 152 books. This is the very first book I read. I love this story because Christine, she talks about her son Jake and how instead of making him assimilate to our world, she entered his world and sat with him in his reality. And that's how she was able to crack him open. The book continues to go on and say how she started a preschool and helped many other kids, just like her son Jake. My next book is The Sunrise. Similar to Jake's story, Ron was diagnosed with autism and was nonverbal at a young age. But again, the parents entered the kids' world. Ron was known to spin a plate on the kitchen floor for hours at a time. His parents ended up sitting on the floor and spinning the plate with him and just spending time in his world. The part that really cracked me open in this book is Ron, in the very end, writes a foreword after his graduation from college. He'd become verbal. This woke me up and made me realize that me as the father, my job is not only to earn the money, my job is to help contribute with the kids as well. In the book, it also mentions the listening program created by the Advanced Brain Technologies, Utah-based company. They're actually out of Ogden. Now, the listening program is music listening therapy. It is classical music recorded in world-class studios by world-class artists for the intention and purpose of healing. I contacted them and created a relationship with them and started this treatment with Theo. As soon as we started this treatment, we regained eye contact. We stabilized his mood. We saw great results. I later read in a book, The Myth of Autism, Dr. Goldberg says, autism spectrum disorder has become a wastebasket diagnosis and an excuse for the medical community to abandon research, treatments, and hope for so many ill patients. He continues, I propose that many of these children with acquired autism fall into this medical category of NIDS, neuroimmune dysfunction syndromes, and need to be viewed as suffering from an autoimmune medical illness that is potentially treatable. So Theo was diagnosed with autism in the summer of 2018. A year later, we're on a family vacation to Seattle, and he had started to display these obsessive compulsive disorders. And my wife had read about a diagnosis that displayed these similar characteristics. And when we got home, we went to the doctor and had his titers, his ASO and AB titers tested. The doctor we went to said it's the highest levels he's ever seen. And it was all from his mother's intuition. But the doctor did say that he knows nothing about it, so he recommended that we search for specialists. What we ended up finding was through this network that my wife had created was a functional medicine doctor out of Henderson, Nevada. Never heard of functional medicine before. And we started going to it, and we learned a lot about Dr. Nick Ogasian. He has a 12-year-old son that has autism and is nonverbal, so he understands our reality that we live. We loved him from the get. Well, he went through this history with us to really start to understand Theo's entire development from in utero to present day. I fell in love with functional medicine, and I wanted to know more. We did all this work in history of everything that he ever faced, all the foods he ate, any toxins that he ever was exposed to. And throughout this process, with pandas, he has flares where he self-harms, where he punches himself in the head, he scratches himself until he bleeds. We had some horrible nights where we would take turns holding him down to prevent him from self-harming. Well, Dr. Perlmutter is one of the world-renowned specialists in functional medicine, so I knew I had to get his book. Well, in his book, he talks about what's called fecal microbiota transplant for kids specifically with autism. In the story, I know it's small letters, so I'll just summarize it here, but he talks about Jason, one of his patients, that he didn't have very many lactobacillus species, which is gut bacteria. And what I learned is all of us need gut flora. It's the first defense in our immune system is to have good, healthy gut bacteria. And what was happening with Theo is pandas is an autoimmune illness. The body starts attacking itself. There's not enough healthy bacteria within the body to care for his immune system. So we decided we were going to investigate the fecal microbiota transplant even more. Dr. Hyman, also a world-renowned specialist, says in his book, it's hard to believe, but in the not-too-distant future, we may be swallowing frozen poop pills from healthy donors to reboot our gut. Early studies show that fecal microbiota transplantation can reverse diabetes, obesity, autism, autoimmune diseases, etc. This is a picture of one of those frozen poops. We actually went to Mexico, and the injection was through his colon, and then for 3-4 months, we gave him this frozen poop. Later, we ended up doing stem cells. The fecal microbiota transplant worked wonders, and then Theo and I were in a car accident, truck going 50 miles per hour, totaled our Subaru Ascent, was in our third row. If I was in a sedan, he would have killed Theo, and that sent us backwards. We had 6 months of no flares from pandas, and then the accident happened. So then we found the next best thing, which was stem cells, which we went to Mexico and had stem cells. And again, the flares stopped. Now, the reason I tell this story is these treatments, we had to go out of the country to get it. FMT and stem cells are not approved by the FDA unless you're in a clinical research study at a university, which takes years to be on those waiting lists. This is our podcast where we tell a lot of our story. So I invite you to check out it's called the Pure Living Family Podcast to really understand the full history. I only have 15 minutes to tell it tonight, but I ended up starting a nonprofit because of our learnings of our little boy. And I have to just mention, Elena, you're changing your framework of what happens to you in life is true. I was resentful to God for a long time. To the universe, I was really angry. My son had to be in pain. But the moment I changed the framework to understand that this is a lesson not only for him, but for all of us. Theo is a teacher. Theo is nonverbal, but he teaches everyone that he comes in contact with. And we're sharing his message. Pure Living is a wellness company that I started. I'm a functional medicine coach. Some of you might wonder, what in the world is that? A wellness coach helps you reach your peak potential. That's what I do. I've learned it because of my son's experience. Now, the title of my talk is The Path of a Sovereign Man. And the last thing I'll say is the one thing I've learned is a sovereign man is not free. He just has the choice of where he ties himself to responsibility. And a father shows up for his kids. He doesn't just make money. He's there, present, and contributing to the development of this child. If you'd like to donate to our nonprofit that was just established this year, you can scan the QR code, you can text this number, or you can buy our products at purelivingfamily.com. Thank you very much.